I would like to call to order the July 11th, 2022 regular meeting of the Willoughby East Lake City Schools Board of Education. This meeting is being held in accordance with Section 3313.15 of the Ohio Revised Code. Mrs. Crooks, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Boxler.
Here.
Mr. Roscos.
Here.
Mr. Vittori.
Here.
Ms. Mensler. Here. Ms. Baer.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Can we please all rise to do the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We would like to welcome everyone to our meeting this evening. To ensure that we are all aware of the way these meetings operate, we want to share the following. 1, prior to this evening, each board member has received for their review and consideration the agenda and materials associated with each agenda item for the board's approval. And board members have the opportunity to call the superintendent and/or treasurer for information concerning agenda items and to request, if needed, additional information. Board members are not permitted per Ohio Meetings Act and sunshine laws to conduct conversations regarding board business outside of a public meeting. Tonight will be the first time in which we as a board can conduct, as a whole, conversations related to all items on the agenda. Okay. For example, there's many things on tonight's agenda that we as a group have not had the ability to discuss, but it'll be our first opportunity to do so. This meeting's agenda is always available through the district's website for public viewing prior to the board meeting. Community members can always email the board with questions or come and participate in the public comment portion of our meeting. Public comment provides an opportunity for the community to address the school board directly, and to participate in public comments, participants would sign up before the meeting. They're usually held, they're right there on the podium. I know we had a gentleman this evening that said, "Can you explain that?" So the papers are up there on the podium, you fill out the information needed, and you provide them to our treasurer. When signing up, you are also provided a copy of our public participation policy. Participants are asked to abide by those requirements. As the meeting progresses, you will see the board discuss items and not vote. Those items are marked with an asterisk on the agenda. These items are a part of our consent calendar. To ensure our meetings move along, we vote to approve all of these items at the end of a meeting. Other items without an asterisk are voted on individually for a variety of reasons which are outlined within our policies. Lastly, the way in which we conduct our meetings is outlined in our district policies, and you can find these on the Board of Education tab on the district's website. We'll now move on to our agenda items. We move on to item 1D. Do I hear a motion to approve appointment of our treasurer pro temp?
Madam President, I make a motion to approve item 1D, appointment treasurer pro temp.
And do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second that motion.
Thank you very much. So this evening we have Donna Crooks here with us as our treasurer pro temp in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 3313.23 in the absence of our treasurer, Mr. Nicholas Charnello, for the July 11th, 2022 meeting. The floor is open for discussion. Mrs. Crooks, can you take a roll, please?
Mr. Boxler.
Yes.
Mr. Roscos.
Yes.
Mr. Vittori.
Yes.
Ms. Mensler.
Yes.
Ms. Baer.
Yes.
Sorry about that, Al.
You're doing great. Thank you. We'll now move on to item, so the motion passes
Oh, yes. I'm sorry.
5-0. It's okay. We're in this together. Okay. We'll now move on to item 2A, the approval of our agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve our agenda?
Madam President, I make a motion to approve item 2A, the approval of the agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Vittori. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I will second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Oscus. The floor is...
Not to interrupt, I'm sorry. Do you want to move the policy to discussion before you approve the agenda?
That is actually something worthy of discussion. So there is, one second. Make sure I properly state it. Item 10A, reading of policy 0168. I feel that this needs to be moved. There should still be discussion surrounding it, but I feel that a discussion needs to occur amongst the board before they can truly vote to make this a first reading of the policy. So there were some changes in language made through some discussion that I had with Dr. Thompson today, and it just recently was updated. And ultimately, that warrants discussion before we consider it for our first read. So you'll notice it on the board agenda and on the website. So instead of having it as our first read for policy, we could move it up to board discussion, have a full conversation about it before placing it for its first read. I'll give everybody a second to locate that. What are your thoughts?
So are we free to talk? Is that how it works?
Yep.
So this is a section adding about what, recording the meeting
Yes.
from someone other than part of the school board or the school district?
Yes. It also pertains information that relates back to a resolution that we passed on May 19th, whether to record all meetings or just regular or regular and special.
I would like to move it to the discussion and take it out of first reading.
Okay. Okay. So at this point in time, to amend our agenda, we would need to have a motion to modify our agenda. So do I hear a motion to approve modification of our agenda for this evening?
I make a motion to modify our agenda for the evening.
Okay. To move item 10A to board discussion under item 4A. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second that motion.
Thank you very much. So ultimately, it would move, it'd be something that we could talk about in detail and then make decisions on when to place it back on an agenda for first read. Any other discussion? Okay. Mrs. Crooks, can you take a roll?
This is a vote to modify the agenda. Mr. Boxler,
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Vittori,
Yes.
Ms. Menser,
Yes.
Ms. Bear.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. So now, do I hear a motion to approve our revised agenda, which has moved item 10A to board discussion under item 4A? Do I hear a motion to approve that revised agenda?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to approve the revised agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Boxler. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Vittori. Okay. Mrs. Crooks, can you take a roll?
Mr. Boxler,
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Vittori,
Yes.
Ms. Menser,
Yes.
Ms. Bear.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 3A, Community Engagement, Board President Q&A. Okay. So per our public participation policy, the board responds to public comment at the next regular board meeting. So at this portion, we're taking what occurred at our June 13th meeting and responding to that in this meeting. So any public comment that there is today will be responded to in our August 8th meeting. That's outlined in our board policy. So during our June 13th meeting, we had 2 community members make comments related to safety in our schools, and the board will now address both. I am reading a statement, by the way, which has been provided and approved by each board member. Our first speaker asked 3 questions. The first question was, will teachers be able to carry guns in our schools? To answer, Willoughby Eastlake already has a policy in place to address this question. Policy 1617 has been in place and prohibits staff members from possessing, storing, making, or using a weapon, including a concealed weapon, in a school safety zone and any setting that is under the control and supervision of the board for the purpose of school activities. That is an excerpt from the policy. There are exceptions One that is worthy of note in response to this community member's question is that weapons under the control of state or federal agents authorized to carry deadly weapons who are acting within the scope of their duties or law enforcement agents can carry weapons on our grounds. And also, weapons carried by security personnel or other designated staff employed by the board who are qualified under state law to carry a weapon in a school safety zone while on active duty. So those are some exceptions and an excerpt from our policy, which is once again 1617. The second question the community member asked is, will committee meetings be open to the public? I was not able to confirm with the community member prior to the meeting, but I'm assuming that these are related to our strategic planning committee, and we will address that question when we review our resolution regarding strategic planning committee in today's meeting. We have a resolution for that. And lastly, the last question is, what is our school rating? Our year-end rating information will be finalized on July 18th, and we will report out on these results in detail in our August meeting.
Mrs. Bear, just for additional information, 2021 school year and 1920 school years are not rated because of COVID. So the state did not do those. And then we'll get, on the 18th, we'll receive student information. Then student information will be sent out by building principals when they return to parents. And then the rankings, the actual rankings with the grades, that I'm guessing is more what you're asking about, are published in October. So, but individual test scores and so a lot of data will be available to us by the end of the month, but the actual letter grades, October.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. Excuse me. Our second speaker spoke with regards to an incident regarding a student at Longfellow Elementary and the access that their family had during multiple visits to the school on May 24th during school hours. There were many things stated during their public comments which questioned Willoughby Eastlake's ability to keep their grandchild and other students safe. All Willoughby Eastlake staff members, administrators, and this board take matters regarding security seriously. As is our practice, Dr. Thompson immediately launched an investigation. He met with Principal Watson of Longfellow Elementary and worked with computer services to pull all applicable video records. Dr. Thompson and his team worked to investigate each concern. As this is of the utmost importance to the board, we will now report out on the findings of this investigation. It is important to note that each member of the board has seen the video footage themselves, which provides a clear record of the access to the building, which is the center of the concerns issued by the community member. It is also important to note that Dr. Thompson has met with the community member to discuss the events and to provide an opportunity for them to watch the video as well. We are not showing the video here today to protect the identities of the students, staff, and community members shown during the events. To ensure everybody may follow along with the findings, it is noted that the community member's wife visited the school 2 times on May 24th, which surround the concerns that were issued. The first time was before lunchtime and one was after. So concern number 1, as issued, upon arriving at the school, the community member's wife was not required to ring a buzzer to gain entry to the school. Findings in the investigation is that this is true. As students were entering the building under the supervision of 2 noon aides, the community member's wife walked in as students were also entering the building. Now, the action steps the district is taking at this time is that students at all buildings will no longer use the main entrance of any building as means of re-entry. This will eliminate this from occurring in the future. Concern number 2. As the community member's wife entered the building, she could have easily walked into the school and down the hallways as the second set of doors to our bullpens was open. Our findings in the investigation is that our exterior and interior doors were being properly monitored by Willoughby Eastlake staff members. We can see clearly in the video that the exterior doors and the bullpen doors were being held open for students to re-enter the building. As is our protocol, a noon aide was inside of the school, past the bullpen doors, monitoring students inside. and a second noon aide was in the bullpen monitoring students continuously entering from the outside. Anyone other than students would have been intercepted by a staff member. The community member was engaged by our secretarial staff and buzzed in, which means allowed, into the office, and the offices are locked, and was immediately greeted. The action steps after review of the video, it was concluded that the community member may not have seen the noon aides in the bullpen or within the building. Our noon aides did not have a uniform code at that time, but rather they would dress casually within their own wardrobe. As previously discussed in our, which meeting was it, Dr. Thompson?
Our last board meeting.
It was our last board meeting. The need to have a uniform for our noon aides is a security concern, as they should be able to be quickly spotted and seen when amongst our students. Now, Dr. Thompson had already been working to receive estimates so that we may purchase appropriate and identifying uniforms for these staff members. Dr. Thompson, you've brought an example today.
I would guard your eyes, so that's what they'll be wearing. We're trying to stay within our school colors. We really didn't want to make them neon, but we have green and blue, and between custodians, maintenance people, food service, we are eating up all of our colors. So, but I do think it would have made a difference. If you see the video, you can clearly see that the person entering just simply didn't see the staff member that was standing there, and a lot of our kids are as tall as our aides. So, and we have other issues in the cafeteria, for example, trying to find the noon aides aren't always easy to identify, but now they will be.
Now, at our last board meeting, it was in question whether the expense was way too much. But now it has been affirmed to the board that the expense will keep our students safe and properly identify these staff members for all. Dr. Thompson already showed the example, but once again, have we received any other estimates, or is it around $10,000?
We were able to drive it down by about $1,100.
Wonderful.
It's through the same vendor, just a different shirt, but it's still a really high quality shirt and looks good. So unless we get feedback that they're falling apart in the washing machine, then we'll stick with this brand.
Wonderful. So that's our action step in response to the findings and the concern. So concern number 3, the office staff were working with heads down and oblivious to the fact that the community member's wife was even there. The findings after review of the video is that the community member's wife had visited the school multiple times on the same day. Outside of the incident with the students holding open the doors, which we do admit happened, the community member had to use the exterior buzzer to gain entry into the school and then be granted access additionally into the office. At no point with the second visit were the doors propped open or accessible. The secretarial staff immediately buzzed, once again, let the community member into the school and into the office and engaged them in conversation in a professional and timely manner. During the entirety of the community member's stay, they were seen, engaged, and supported, and unable to access the building without direct intervention by a Willoughby Eastlake staff member. Our final conclusion, there was no security breach. Merely a misunderstanding which has resulted in the following actions. Once again, student reentry into the building during school hours, from recess, or any other event will be rerouted to other points of entry, not the main entrance of the building. Lastly, that noon aid uniforms were and are a necessity. To include in the comments made by community members, additional comments related to Uvalde, the district security, and the events in question at Longfellow Elementary were made by board members during our June 13th meeting. Some of the comments made have raised concerns amongst our staff. The board would like to address this concern. The board holds our staff in the highest regard. We have a total of 11 children, all currently attending or graduates of the Willoughby Eastlake School Board within the Board of Education itself. We have willingly placed our children in the hands of our staff, knowing that they are safe, learning, and cared for. It is a hard hat to wear, that of a parent and an elected board member. We have intimate and direct contact with our schools in ways that our community wanted, which is why there have been 3 new board members. At our June 13th meeting, comments were made that merged the lines between the role of a parent and a board member. Moving forward, the board is taking the following action steps to support the importance of both roles and relationships within our district, as well as their separation. The first thing we're going to do is we're working with OSBA to schedule a training which will support the board's ability to conduct a self-evaluation and review our policies, which provide a code of conduct for us when operating in the capacity of a board member. We have all discussed and agreed that moving forward, when situations directly involve our children, we will work outside of board meetings to discuss and investigate situations. When these situations have a broad scope, which could impact all students in the district, we will bring findings of these situations and investigations to meetings to allow the board to discuss these as a group. Please remember, the only way we can discuss these things is all together in public meetings. This significantly limits our ability to address issues in a collaborative way outside of public meetings. Lastly, we as parents, we still have rights. We are board members and parents. We are working with Dr. Thompson to put pathways in place to support our ability to be parents and board members when appropriate situations occur. So before I conclude our statement to the community, I would like to invite any other board members who have comments they would like to individually make to take time for that now. Would anybody like to speak individually?
I also prepared a statement to make this evening. I would like to address the statement I had made at the June board meeting in regards to safety and security, which was on the agenda to be discussed. My goal in telling my personal experience with my own daughter was to bring awareness to safety and bullying issues going on in the school and to help other students from having to go through the same thing. My wish was to work as a board to take a deeper look into our policy and procedures surrounding student safety. My intent was certainly not to show the staff in a negative light. I had hoped we could learn from the situation that affected my daughter and enhance our policies and procedures to ensure this doesn't happen again to other students. Unfortunately, through the process of me sharing this very emotional situation, the focus was taken off of student safety and shifted onto the fact that this may have shed some negative light onto the staff. This again was not the purpose of me sharing this disturbing event. Being a board member and a parent allows me to look through a unique lens. I have a duty to use my voice in my position to speak for those who cannot speak for themselves, whether that may be the taxpayers, the parents, or the students. I will continue to advocate for the students and bring awareness to situations that occur with hopes that it will aid our schools in becoming a safer environment. I believe there is always opportunities to look at ways to improve student safety.
Would anybody else like to make any statement? Okay. So in conclusion, the district strives to provide the best education and environment that it can. It would not be possible without our educators and support staff. We thank our staff for keeping our kids safe and for advocating for them at every opportunity. Educators are met with obstacles daily, and they still manage to put a smile on their face and do the day's work. This becomes increasingly hard as over the last few school years, school districts have been given unprecedented obstacles. Now, we can either receive these obstacles as a burden or an opportunity. This board and the administration are moving forward to see obstacles as opportunities to reflect, collaborate, and improve. Moving forward, our energies will be laser focused on our students' academic achievement and safety while accessing their education. As a district, we want to shift our focus to our students and the strategic plan that supports them. We need to support our staff and students so Willoughby Eastlake can strive to fulfill its mission to prepare graduates for the challenges of the 21st century. We know none of this is possible without all of our amazing staff and our engaged community. We have very important endeavors that lay ahead of us. We need to come together because together is the only way forward. We know that our students, parents, community, and staff are the reason we are here, and we are here to work for you and are grateful for the opportunity to do so. And with that, that concludes our board president Q&A and response to our 2 public comments from last meeting. At this point in time, we'll move on to item 3B, public comment. Just want to high level that during public comment, each individual was provided a copy of our public participation policy. Just real brief information. There's a 3-minute timer that will be placed up on the screen, and we'll ask each member who decides to speak this evening to honor that 3 minutes. And once again, we respond to public comment in next month's regular meeting, which will be on August 8th. And with that, Mrs. Crooks, can you please call our first public comment?
Mr. Bernie Ragle from Willoughby, Ohio.
There's one here. I'm Bernie Ragle. I own a property at 5365 Carrot Isle Drive, where my daughter and 2 grandchildren live. So I have this, I just have some issues that I don't think you guys may not be aware of and concerns. Okay, I have a packet for each of you. Whoops, I have a packet for each of you. You can just pass them out. You don't have to look at them right now. I'll touch them and you can think, you'll see what I was talking about in the future, the detail. So I got a lot more with pictures and everything else that'll help you. First issue. Some of the parents, my granddaughters go to Mater Dei Academy and one's going to Notre Dame Cathedral Latin. The first thing was Peterman contacted some of the parents and said they won't be doing busing next year to Notre Dame. Well, that was a surprise to a whole lot of people. It was a surprise to Notre Dame Cathedral Latin. It was a surprise to Notre Dame Elementary School. So there's quite a number of people in Willoughby that send their kids there. Now, it's only 17 miles or somewhere in that range when I did a Google from here to there. I think that's within the realm. The key that I had about it that I was concerned is once some of the parents got the letter, not everyone did. Once they got the letter, Peterman came back and changed their mind, and Notre Dame even contacted them. And they changed their mind and said, no, we'll do it this year. Well, my real question is the concern. You guys extended the contract, you said in your last meeting, for 5 years. Is that included? Wasn't that continuing? Was there an exception? What do we have? You know, did we accept not to go to NDCL? If they did, they didn't contact anybody, and you didn't let the parents know and the taxpayers know. Because basically those that we send those codes, that's really the only thing we get out of the education dollars coming from Willoughby School. And there'd probably be a whole bunch of them that would change their mind and come into your public school system. Because some of the kids they barely can afford going to those schools, okay? Second one that I have is a little differently. It's a little more personal. These are, I would call, safety concerns and issues. My granddaughters get dropped off and they changed and they went to an area which is about 5.5 blocks away from their house when they're dropped off after school. Well, in the snow, it's down on Jack Reinhardt Street. And when you came with all the snow for 5 or 6 weeks, they had to walk in the street. They couldn't get there. Buses wouldn't go down. They wouldn't get them and drop them off. My real concern is the older one's going to NDCL next year and the other one's is 11. So as she goes to school, there was a sexual predator in that path about 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know if he's still there. I checked. I didn't see him there. But those issues with the concerns of picking up kids, you know, in the whole Cleveland area, Euclid, all this, it's not that far away. I'm very concerned that that's too long. What really bothered me is I was shoveling the snow in front of the house after one day that we saw it. And guess what? The same bus number went about 10 minutes later right down in front of her house. So if they can go there now, why can't they drop them off? For 6 years, they were dropping them off at their house. That's a concern. Safety for them. I don't want a 11-year-old girl walking down there by herself. Okay, the last issue, and I have pictures of it.
Mr.
You'll see
Riegel,
some-
your time has expired,
Okay,
sir.
I'm sorry. Just education, it's in there.
Is it in here?
Education to the bus, because they're not protecting the kids coming across. They're letting the people, they're dropping them off, driving off, and then the kids got to fend for themselves across the street. So I
Mr.
think they
Riegel,
need
thank
to-
you.
Huh? Sure,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Riegel.
Okay,
We'll
thank
make
you.
sure to look at this. Thank you, sir. Okay. Mrs. Crooks, who's our next individual for public comment?
Ms. Chris Kraniak of Eastlake.
Well, my initial reason for coming in here is because of the original agenda that was posted this morning where it said, "No person may film or record a meeting of the Board of Education without prior notice and consent of the members of the Board of Education." And I took particular umbrage with that. Ohio and Ohio General is completely recognized that is not something that's needed. Not only that, we're a one-party state. If I chose to sit there and record the meeting, I have absolute every right to. I appreciate the fact of the changes that you made to it, because anybody should be allowed. That's part of our right. Now, obtrusive, not having the ability to plug in, bothering the people out here, that's a different story. So I appreciate the changes that you made. Perhaps in the next meeting, you can just adjust, if you could explain to us why that decision was made, whether that's people are getting a hold of these meetings or they're taping themselves and they're posting them on social media. We're in a different era now, and I understand that. But my own personal experience is I don't trust what's being recorded up there. So that's my personal experience. My video was edited, and I think it's incumbent upon all of us to have our own recording, our own knowledge, and not have them pablum fed to us after the fact. I'm still waiting a year for my public records request for that video. A year. The video that I talked about, CRT. And I originally I didn't even recognize that it had been cut and spliced, except that somebody noticed that up on the board the minutes changed. So it was very clearly edited in an entire portion. So then I put in a records request, but they never got it to me. If you could follow up on that, I'd appreciate it.
I will. It was 9 seconds edited.
Correct.
And the reason the 9 seconds were edited was because a person in the crowd shouted out something that was offensive and aggressive and untrue towards an employee, and legal counsel advised us not to put that out.
Well,
So
Dr.
that's-
Thompson, just to honor her time, because her clock's still
Right.
It's
No,
a move to
that's okay. I
discussion,
appreciate it.
So we will
I'll give-
absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So initially, that's the reason that I came here, and I appreciate the fact that you guys changed it. I get most concerned when I hear consent. It's not up to anyone to consent for me to practice my rights to record in whatever way the state views recording. So with that, I thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Sorry, Dr. Thompson, I just know it's coming
No,
for
you're
discussion,
right.
so
appreciate it.
You're right.
I didn't want to take your
I
time.
just wanted to.
It's
No,
okay.
You're right.
I'll
You're
cut
right.
him off if it was wrong. It's okay.
I know.
We got it.
I'm trying to stay true to said policies. Okay, thank you. Mrs. Crooks, who is next?
Mr. Tony Siracusa of Eastlake.
Hello, can everybody see and hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, because I couldn't make last month's meeting, so I watched it back on YouTube. And to my surprise, you said there were no speakers at the May 9th meeting. I spoke. I did have questions. Why were my views about the levy ignored? My main reason for speaking tonight is this strategic planning committee you're doing to decide cuts when the levy fails. I get angrier and angrier every time I see this. No one forced you guys to run for school board. You did that freely and willingly. This is your job as a school board. You are not going to say, well, the community decided these cuts, not us. Your job, your responsibility. Stop this nonsense and concentrate on our funding problems. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Who do we have next?
Ms. Nancy Knack of Willowick.
Nancy Knack, 28946 Beechwood Drive, Willowick, Ohio, union president and an employee for 20-some years in the district. I was going to make a statement today, but since Mrs. Baird and Ms. Mentzer have already rectified that and found out that things that were said, I was going to comment on that as union president and an employee about the egregious comments that were made against the staff that I represent. But since that has been cleared up, I will withdraw, and I want to thank you both for your comments. They work very, very hard. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Crooks, do we have any other speakers?
We do not.
So that'll conclude our public comment section for tonight's meeting. Once again, based on the structure of today's agenda, we may address some. However, they will be formally responded to in next month's meeting. So we'll move on now to item 4A, board members' business, board discussion. Okay. So we have a couple things to address. Should we start with the item that was moved for today's agenda? Should we just start there, maybe, get that out of the way? I also attended a training and wanted to report out on that, but maybe we can do that second. Sound good? Okay. So let me get my ducks in a row here. I'm going to bring up, so we met on May 19th, and it was a special meeting, and one of the things that we discussed was, should we record all meetings moving forward? And was it regular meetings, special meetings? Do we live stream them all, et cetera, et cetera? And I would highly recommend, there was good discussion on May 19th. Our recording is posted on the board's website. We talked at length about what we should or shouldn't do. And then there was a board resolution. So just to kind of take us down memory lane, is that we ultimately decided to not record all meetings, regular versus special. Special, we would not record, we would record regular meetings. There was discussion about fiscal responsibility, staff, the expense to have staff come and record our meetings. And if anybody's noticed a change, our meetings are no longer an hour long. They average 2 to 3 hours in length each time. So we discussed out, should we be having staff members extend their workday by upwards of 3 to 4 hours, paying them, et cetera. And ultimately, we all agreed to just record regular meetings. However, after our June 13th meeting, there were concerns that were brought, and it was brought to my attention by our administration as a board president that portions of our June 13th meeting had been recorded by a community member. And then we almost had a 4-hour-long meeting, which went deep dive into building security and safety and concerns. We discussed some things that were brought to light through public comment, but only less than 10 minutes of that meeting was spliced and diced and published to the community. So I personally, as the board president, reached out to legal counsel, and I said, I think transparency is extremely important. And there's a small portion of our meeting with a small portion of information that's being circulated. And I think it sheds our school in a negative light and leaves out a ton of information, specifically the presentation on security, our processes, procedures. We brought up a bunch of questions. We as a board even said, we need to talk about security at every meeting. It can't just be a one and done. This is an ongoing conversation. That was excluded. So I said, what can we do to kind of help partner with community members when they want to come in and record, whether that's video or audio? And legal counsel had advised me that we could place something on our board policy, which was already up for revision because we had a resolution on the 19th stating we're only doing regulars for fiscal reasons. And I spoke with Dr. Thompson, and I said, legal counsel has advised that we could take this into consideration. Ultimately, having individuals who want to record us just come up and notify, hey, I'm recording today. Kind of the same way the news media does. I think back we've had a meeting where the media came in. They need to get their soundbite. They had to mic. They had to mic the podium. They had to mic the table to get good audio. And if they just notify us that they're recording, then we know. And we can better partner. But if we don't know, we can't partner. It might also open an opportunity for us to have a conversation. Why are you recording us? What do we need to know? What other opinion and perspective do we need to have? And if we don't know, we can't address that. So I gave that to Dr. Thompson. Now, I knew that today was going to be the first reading of a policy change. It's merely a discussion. We were not voting today, and if anything needed to be amended or any other board member was not in agreement with it or wanted something to change, that would be a discussion today. And we were going to have that discussion. Dr. Thompson, once I gave kind of the, hey, can you look into this for us, there was some conversation, and we had posted an agenda item with the policy, and then it was brought to our attention that maybe the language being used with the revision needed some updating. Correct?
I received a call actually from a staff member on Saturday that said, you need to take another look at that piece of policy. As soon as I got here on Monday, I sent it to legal, and legal had made those changes and then went and edited the change based on advice from legal counsel.
Now, we as a board needed to review that change, which is why I think we needed to move it off of being its first policy read, because we need to discuss it. And that's what these meetings are designed for. So at this point in time, I know we all have our computers open. We should probably look at the policy and have a conversation about it. So I am all for being very clear and transparent. And if you have questions, ask us. That's why we're here. And there's no withholding. We actually had a debate on how much should we record and post. And once again, trying to be fiscally minded to our community and be held accountable for not overspending, we decided only regulars. And I think that we should maybe review that discussion tonight as well as the policy. And that's just me as a board member. It's not a directive. So with that, I leave the floor open.
Krista, I know you said one of your concerns was the splicing and dicing of videos. And even if someone has to fill out a form to say that they are recording, they can still splice and dice a video, right? So I don't understand how that would stop somebody from doing so.
That's a great question. I don't think it was ever to stop. It was more to, so we know that someone's recording as a board. And once again, it creates an opportunity for a conversation. So you're here to record. What concerns do you have? And I think there was a concern issued by the community today that there was an event that occurred. May of 2021, I believe, was the month and year in which the video that we briefly spoke about, we know that that is a question and concern, and is in the back of the minds of our community, where if we could partner with these organizations and or individuals who are like, hey, I want to record you, it might open a dialogue and a conversation so that we can get their perspective. Honestly, that's, I'm hopeful for is, hey, you guys came up, you have a problem, you think that you need to record us because let's talk that out. So, go ahead.
Perhaps a solution just for your consideration. We already have a staff member here recording regular sessions, and considering Chris's comment, which I'm sure is not held solely by Chris, we could live stream every regular session and not be an additional cost to the district. I'm sure that my tech director back there, would that be doable?
Yeah, yes, he would.
Okay, so then that solves that problem. If it's live streamed, you can't edit it, you can't dock it, and you could watch it from home. And so maybe more people will participate and increase your transparency, which I know is an issue that this board wants to address, as it should. And it would alleviate the problem that a video was edited. The downside, of course, is in the case, for example, of the one video in my 11 years here, we've edited one video. It was that video that she's referencing, 9 seconds. But I get that maybe some people don't. And if you knew my technical skills, you would know that there's no chance I'm editing a video. But but I think that might help not only build transparency, but help build trust as well.
So you'd live stream it but not record it?
No, both.
Both.
You can do both simultaneously, right?
You can do both simultaneously.
Okay.
The audio quality isn't quite as good when live streamed. That would be the only disadvantage.
Okay.
Well, I think that's a hurdle that's been issued to us previously, that the audio quality is difficult on the recording. So I think that's something to consider, because clearly what we say is the most important part of watching the meeting. So audio quality.
We do have some steps we're looking at, adding some microphones, so each member does have a microphone.
Would the recorded part still be clear?
I run it through some filters to make the audio more audible and level. So I could always do that after the fact as well. There's some other steps we're talking about mitigation. As the purchasing is opened up, we're going to be leveling the audio a little bit better as well.
Okay, so if you couldn't hear it live stream for some reason, you could go back and check against the recorded version that would be posted on YouTube.
Correct.
Like right now, we're currently being recorded. in the back corner. That's what Mr. Vittori just asked me. He's like, is that our video camera or is it somebody else's? Once again, do we need to have a conversation with organizations that question or don't or lack trust with our school? And I feel the answer to that is probably yes. You know, I think one of the things that's missing today in our society, in our district, we're fighting a lot of battles and we're trying to do the best that we can, but there are one-sided conversations on social media where if we were to partner and have conversations, come to us, ask questions, email the board. I have to say, we get a lot of emails. And as the presiding officer, it's my job to respond to all of them. And I try to individually respond to every unique email and copy the board. And like I swear, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning and the emails are lighting up because that's my time that I get to do it. So I just feel we're missing opportunities. And once again, legal counsel had advised it, and we're doing the best we can to do right by the district. So I'll stop talking. I talk a lot. Everybody else.
Well, I wasn't here. Oh, didn't mean to make you jump. Wanted to make sure the mic picked me up. I wasn't here for the meeting on the 19th and the discussions on whether to record, whether to live stream, whether it should be regular meetings, whether it should be special meetings. My personal feeling is that we should be live streaming every single meeting, not just regulars. Special meetings have information that the community might want to hear. And I think it's important that we get that information out there. More information to the community is going to be better and help them understand how we as a board make decisions. So I would like to see us live streaming our specials as well.
What are your thoughts? I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I essentially am.
I'm not weighing in on whether you should or you shouldn't. The only thing I want to weigh in is to protect the employees in this case. And what I would ask for is the permission of the board to sit down with the union to negotiate an MOU so that I could, it's a lot of time for these people, and while that's an expectation of the superintendent, it's not an expectation of a computer tech. So perhaps trading some time, let them, we don't give comp time, so I don't want to call it comp time, but something that we can make that is enticing to those people to stay into the night for some level of compensation besides paying overtime, which, you know, if we got to do that, we got to do that, but I'd rather give them an option. So if that's agreeable with you, I'll work that out to try and reduce the cost and take the burden off the employee.
What is everyone's thoughts?
I absolutely think we should be doing it. You know, I know it's an added cost, but again, I think the public has a right to be able to see that information, to see us talking about whatever is coming up in those meetings. You know, we've had some spirited discussions in some of those meetings, and I think that's okay. You know, I think that's okay, because then the community sees what we go through, the information that we get, and how we're making those decisions. Otherwise, the community doesn't know.
Mr. Askus, Mr. Vittori, before I speak again.
Which specials are we talking about? We're talking about everything except.
Everything except executive sessions.
So give us an example of one that we didn't record. The one on.
Cheryl Ryan with OSBA about the strategic
Oh.
planning committee.
Hey,
Go
all
ahead,
right,
Sam.
technology works, huh? So,
Ask your question again.
specials, define specials for me, and give me an example of which one we had that was a special that wasn't executive session.
So when we invited, our last meeting was a special meeting, when we invited Cheryl Ryan to give direction for the committee, and we had that conversation about the strategic planning committee, which resulted in the resolution for today.
And then we went into executive session.
Yes, that
So
portion would not be recorded.
That wouldn't be recorded?
No.
Okay. And that's consistent with your thinking?
Yes.
Okay.
When we go into executive session, that's executive session. You cannot record that. Everything outside of that, though, I believe is fair game, because the community can come and be part of those if they wish. Let's give them the opportunity to view everything.
But they
We
could al-
said-
but we announced the meeting, right? In
Mhm.
draft and final agenda. So there's 2 public notices of that special meeting,
So the draft is only for internal use. The only version the public sees is the final.
but it's public is notified
Yes,
of that meeting
yes.
where 2 people showed. So you're thinking if people looked at a video or live stream, more people would tune in because it's harder to get to this building on the 5th floor?
I think it has more to do with transparency with the video itself. The meeting's being recorded and live streamed. There's no posting and potential perceived editing of said video.
And people can watch it at their convenience if they're not able to make it to the meeting.
Sure.
And I mean, I think part of what the 3 of us ran on was this idea of a more transparent board. And them not, the community not seeing the board just sitting up here saying yes, 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 or so that the community can see our thought processes behind the decisions. And I think that's important. I think it's really important. Now, it's not saying we're always going to agree on everything, but at least they have a basis for that.
I think anytime you get into a discussion where the sausage is made is a slippery slope at times, but I understand. There's obviously a lack of trust in whatever the community is defined at these days, so roll the tape. Yeah, so I don't have a problem with it. As long as the executive sessions wouldn't be.
No, they cannot be.
Because I think a fair amount of us, what is this saying? This is a meeting.
Of the board in
Of the
public.
board in public, but it's not a public meeting.
Meeting.
So
Yes.
right now, we're sitting here in this dais talking amongst ourselves, and there's, 75 of you watching us thinking we're talking to you, but technically we're not talking to you, we're talking to us, and I think that's
Well, and we've learned that
awkward.
Well,
That's
Just
awkward.
pretend there's a 4th wall here, you know?
well, and I think we've learned that engagement, whether in a special or a regular meeting, that policy's in place for a reason. We would love nothing more than to engage the public. However, these rules are written not only for school boards, but for city council meetings and, Lake County events. These are all for elected officials. So this is the way of operation that's been decided, not by us, but for us with the Ohio Revised Code. So we need to really stick to, and I know we spoke about that at our last special meeting, is sticking to really adhering to our policies and making it a meeting of the board in public, not a public meeting. Okay. So with regard to this policy change, now once again, this was not being thrown on everybody by me. Now we know that as the board president or any 2 board members and or the superintendent treasurer can add something to an agenda. And I knew we'd have opportunity to discuss. So it wasn't something to catch anybody off guard. It was merely just, I know we're going to talk about it, so let's just talk about it. And then, I had issued concerns to Dr. Thompson, specifically, once again, we have a lot happening in our community with one-way communication with social media. And I would hate to have that be the basis of the decision-making for anybody. And if we're going to go through the effort of an MOU and getting our staff to stay late and live streaming, which is excellent, I want the community and the people who question us to come directly to us. Sit down and have the tough conversations and give us a chance. More importantly, give us perspective so we can be better decision makers. So with this is just optional. I know you guys are seeing it for the first time. Does it make sense, Dr. Thompson, to discuss this out today to see, or to the board as well, if this would stay, or do we individually review it as a board and we can provide feedback to you so that you and your team can look at this and then bring it for the next meeting?
Let me just say back what I think I heard. How about that?
Fair enough.
What I think I heard was we want to live stream every meeting and record every meeting. That's what I think I heard. And that the language that we have amended to the recording piece stays as is, which is the second part you read, for example. if you want, again, that was written by legal counsel, but I guess maybe I would suggest you have the conversation of, do you want to say to people that they need to come in and fill out a piece of paper before they record in their seats, or do you just want to allow people to record in their seats? Because I just wonder in the actual practice of that, if that could become confrontational, and for really no reason, because you don't possess the authority to tell them no anyways. So I don't know if you want to keep that. I guess that's the last part I need to understand.
That's fair. What are everyone's thoughts on that?
I think people should just be allowed to record without having to sign a piece of paper.
I think we could keep the part in there that if it's disruptive in some fashion, but I guess we don't need a request or notification that someone's going to record.
Okay. Lawrence? Mr. Vittori, I apologize.
No,
Mr.
that's all right.
Boxler? This is what happens in special meetings. We use each other's first names, and then we come here and I forget to use last names. I apologize.
You said record every meeting except executive sessions, so
Yeah.
regulars and specials.
And it might be important to note to people that don't understand executive session, there are very narrow reasons to go into executive session. And the board has to identify what that reason is before they go into executive session. And I think there are 4 areas where you can go into executive session, but they're very narrow in scope. It's not like the board can just say, we're going into executive session because we want to talk and don't want you to hear it.
And they're always listed on the agenda with a check mark next to the reason and purpose of the executive session, and we hold ourselves to staying to that topic. Okay, so do we want to make a formal decision tonight? Do we want to kind of reflect on it and then send over our feedback to Dr. Thompson after the meeting? If there's anything I'm learning as a board member here at Willoughby Eastlake is I often feel pressured to make decisions here in discussion, and I think we learned with like the strategic planning committee and other things that sometimes sleeping on it provides clarity the next day.
I'd like time to review.
Yeah.
Remember, so what I can do is draft this. Remember, August would just be first read.
Yep.
So you would have an opportunity in August, without violating sunshine laws, to come back, review the policy once again, make edits again, and then come back for a second read for final approval. So you got plenty of time. You don't have to make a decision right now. I just need to understand the basic framework of what you're looking for, and I think I do. Live stream, record, leave in the disruptive piece, but take out the permission piece. Is that what I'm hearing? That's what I would recommend.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And then, upon reflection, which is really strange, I just made the statement that we're going to always reflect and improve. Upon reflection, it probably would have made more sense to place it as a discussion item versus, hey, go ahead and throw it on there and let's review it. But I think it circles back to another question that we've asked as a board. We go to our board retreat on April 23rd. We reviewed a lot of content that day. And one of the things that was discussed was a policy committee. And then Mrs. Menzer and I had a separate meeting with Chuck and Steve shortly thereafter to discuss policy changes and review of it. So I still think that that's something probably worth. And then if we have a board member who's in charge of policy, we could, once again, as a code of conduct for ourselves, like what and how do we proceed with policy changes? So I think that's still something worthy of discussion, right? And I do apologize if I caught anybody off guard. That was not the intent. So that was an oversight on my part. Okay, so we're good to move on to, we're still on board discussion. I have to report out. So we have a board policy that asks that if any board member attends a training, and we're going to be discussing that also later today, that if we attend a training, we have to report out. So I attended the Stronger Together Children's Mental Health Resiliency Virtual Conference on June 28th and 29th. I was a participant in many breakout sessions as well as the keynote speakers. It was all conducted virtually. And some of the topics that were covered, and I'm waiting to get a full copy of the information so I can share it with the board, because it was live streamed. There was like a pre-meeting content, during meeting, and after meeting reflection. It was fairly in depth. So I wanted to concisely compile things, and I'm going to be reaching out to the Western Reserve ESC because they actually presented on a really important meeting that I sat in on, and I wanted to get as much material for the board as possible. So please forgive me, I'm still working on that. So it focused on supporting student health and resiliency, responding to mental health needs and that follow the pandemic, and the collective impact of mental health in the schools. It was the most enlightening training I've taken in a very long time. And I asked Mr. Roskis to send over to me because on April 23rd we had a board retreat, and the area that Mr. Roskis focused on was mental health and our current mental health services that we offer and what we're doing and how we're doing. And what I'm going to compose for the board and provide via email is an alignment for what are we doing now versus what did this conference really identify as best practices, because we know that mental health directly correlates to the safety in our schools. Some of the things that were extremely helpful was that they had a mental health panel comprised of students all over the state of Ohio in high schools. And these students were allowed to answer questions from participants. There was over about 200 people who were doing live stream Q&A with these students. And these students were poised, articulate, passionate, and had struggled with mental health themselves, and then discussed the interventions that their schools have done to help not only them, but other students, and things that they participated with the Ohio, oh gosh, I knew I was going to forget it, the OASL. It's a student leaders organization in Ohio. Some ideas that they threw out there that they found to be very impactful in their schools, which was specifically secondary, like middle school, high school, was things like a hope squad, safe spaces, proper community support and information, meaning the school can't be the only source of mental health support for students. It has to be a community-wide initiative started by the schools and branching out to the community to try to build good mental health services. And something called a Zen Den. And I'm going to report out on all these, but the Hope Squad was the one that stood out to me the most. One of the things that we're struggling with right now is getting enough mental health services professionals, correct, Dr. Thompson? We have a few empty spaces. We have two. So we know that mental health is an issue. We don't have more money to spend on it. We can't find enough people to take on jobs, which is a systemic issue. But what we can do is take pre-selected students who are mature, who demonstrate leadership and an interest in this area, and one of the schools had done this, and they essentially went through training on how to be an ally and an advocate. Kids don't want to talk to adults sometimes. They talk to each other. So this Hope Squad was a network of individuals in the school that allowed students to reach out and talk to them when they were feeling in crisis. And then those students were trained when those crises hit certain thresholds to engage staff. And what it did is it took a small network of mental health professionals and made it a much larger network and made it more accessible for more students. And they found that it had significant impact. So I'm not saying that these are things we should do, but they were great suggestions. And once again, I could probably talk all night about it, but I will send everything out to the board as soon as I receive the full copy. I just think security, physical security is one side of a coin. Mental health is the other, and we need to really hyper-focus on both. At least that's what that conference taught me. So that was everything from the training. Any questions from anyone before we move on? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to item 5A, approval of minutes from June 1st, 2022. Do I hear a motion to approve item 5A?
Madam President, I will make a motion to approve item 5A, approval of minutes of June 1st, 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Roskis. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Boxler. Floor is open. Mrs. Crooks, can you take a roll?
Mr. Boxler?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Vittori?
Yes.
Ms. Menser?
Yes.
Ms. Baird?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Move on to item 5B, approval of minutes from June 13th, 2022. Do I hear a motion to approve item 5B?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to approve item 5B, approval of minutes from June 13th, 2022.
Thank you, Mrs. Menzer. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Vittori. Floor is open. Mrs. Crooks, can you please take a roll?
Mr. Boxler?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Vittori?
Yes.
Ms. Menser?
Yes.
Ms. Baird?
Yes.
Motion carried.
We'll move on to item 5C, approval of minutes from June 14th, 2022. Do I hear a motion to approve item 5C?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to approve item 5C, approval of minutes of June 14th, 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Boxler. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Vittori. Floor is open. Mrs. Crooks?
Mr. Boxler?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Vittori?
Yes.
Ms. Menser?
Yes.
Ms. Bear?
Yes.
Motion carried.
We'll now move on to item 5D, approval of minutes from June 17th, 2022. Do I hear a motion to approve item 5D?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to approve item 5D, approval of minutes of June 17th, 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Roskis. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Boxler. The floor is open. I just want to make mention that once again, we as a board are trying to be as gauged as humanly possible, hence the reason why we had 4 meetings in the month of June. We're meeting as often as we can to have as many conversations as we can. We are truly trying. I just had to say that. With that said, any other comments? Mrs. Crooks?
Mr. Boxler?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Vittori?
Yes.
Ms. Menser?
Yes.
Ms. Bear?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, we'll now move on. Let me bring up my computer agenda here. To item 6A under board resolution for member attendance at the Ohio Education Summit. May it be resolved that upon the recommendation of the board that the Ohio Education Summit held on July 30th, 2022 be approved as a board-sanctioned conference. Do I hear a motion to approve item 6A?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to approve item 6A, member attendance at the Ohio Education Summit.
Thank you, Mrs. Menzer. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Vittori. The floor is open for discussion. Okay, just so everybody understands what's going on, we as board members can receive compensation related to the expense to attend trainings. And to do so, that requires approval from the board, and it relates back to our compensation policy that we already have in place. Hence the reason why it's a resolution today. As we've not had a resolution approving this institution and this conference, we need to do that. Okay, any other conversation? Okay, Mrs. Crooks?
Mr. Boxler?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Vittori?
Yes.
Ms. Menser?
Yes.
Ms. Bear?
Yes.
Motion carried.
We'll move on to item 6B, restructure of strategic planning committee resolution. Whereas the board established a strategic planning committee for the purpose of developing and recommending strategies to the board on emergent financial issues that impact the trajectory of the district, and whereas the Ohio School Board Association has provided guidance and suggestion to the board as a strategic planning committee, and whereas to increase flexibility and better align the strategic planning process, the board desires to restructure the committee. Now therefore, may it be resolved that the board hereby restructures the strategic planning committee from a board-led committee to an administrator-led committee and appoints the superintendent and treasurer to lead the strategic planning committee going forward. Be it further resolved that the board appoints members William Boxler and John Roscoe to serve as liaisons. Do I hear a motion to approve item 6B?
Madam President, I will make a motion to approve item 6B, restructure strategic planning committee resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Roscoe. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Boxler. The floor is open. Obviously, it's in response to a board or a public comment from last month, but also one of the things that we promised on May 19th is that we would report out for special meetings when they're not recorded. So this is our opportunity to do so. As my voice dominates these meetings, would anybody like to start that conversation? Okay.
I wasn't a fan, still not a fan of the strategic planning committee. I think it's a committee that's designed with a focus on what to cut when the levy fails, when we should be focusing on passing the levy. And I think it's a tremendous dilution of resources. However, if it's a board-led committee, I would say no. As it's evolving to Steve and Nick are in charge with liaison from the board. Hopefully it's a focus on the right things as it relates to strategic planning, not necessarily effort of trying to see what we're going to cut out of the budget because the levy's going to fill. Levy's not going to fill. Levy's going to pass, right? So that's the mindset. So I didn't like the charter name, but in defense of Krista's approach last time, it was kind of there was the here's the words, let's sign up yes. So I said yes. I probably would have abstained or said no because where it was heading, I like this a lot better. I don't love it. I like the levy committee better, but I know that's not for this forum. So, yeah, I'll be in support of this.
Other comments? So, just to let everybody know, at our last meeting, and dates are eluding me now because we did so many of them, at our very last special meeting, per the advisement of legal counsel and the go-ahead of the board, we invited Cheryl Ryan from OSBA, which is the Ohio School Board Association, to come in and provide counsel on the committee itself. And ultimately, we as a board did agree that there's one thing if you go back and look at our board meetings. We're not talking about student achievement. We're always dealing with the hot topics of the day. We've been on the board now almost 6 months. We need to start focusing on our strategic plan. We need to start focusing on the objectives that our administrators identify to be crucial and important. And that was, Cheryl definitely, I think, provided some hard focus there, some welcome focus. So, and I provided to everybody today a printout. So, working with legal counsel, we have to revise a resolution that was made, which is why we're making another resolution. We're transitioning it from board to administrative, and ultimately we need to provide notification. I think what came out of that meeting was we want our community involved. We're trying to find ways to do that. The first time is always the most painful. So in trying to get our community involved, to be a part of the process, because oftentimes we're accused of not being fiscally responsible, and we don't include individuals, we're not transparent, so let's bring them in. And more importantly, learn from what they have to say and listen to their perspective. So Dr. Thompson and Mr. Charnello have graciously agreed after discussing, hey, this is where we're going, we know you got a lot on your plate. But they're going to take it over, and essentially what we've charged Dr. Thompson and Mr. Charnello with is to schedule time, and an email will go out. This is an example of the email that would go out. Dr. Thompson and Mr. Charnello will have to decide which date in August. There'll be an initial meeting to discuss, like board Finance 101. Open up the books, give the committee some time to really learn about our finances, and then Dr. Thompson, you'd report out on operations. So that's coming directly from the source, from the subject matter experts. They'll be provided time for conversation and discussion. There may be additional subsequent meetings, and that will be really head up by Mr. Roskis and Mr. Boxler. I was made aware by legal counsel that because it was a board-constructed committee, which would be subject to sunshine laws, it would be the best practice to ensure that this committee moving forward also aligns with sunshine laws, meaning meeting minutes would be taken and notice provided. So individuals who are not on the committee could attend. Now I'm still working with Dr. Thompson and this legal advice to really define what that is, and then we'll report back out as soon as we've had a time. We haven't really had time since we received that to have that conversation. Are we going to have it stay with sunshine law or not? Right? We talked about that earlier.
I would err on the side of caution.
Yeah. So that answers our public comment question is, will these committees be open to the public? At this point in time, yes. Stay tuned. Okay. What other questions or what things am I leaving out from the special meeting that needs to be discussed or referenced?
The only request I think that Nick and I would have, speaking for Nick, I guess I should say Steve, is if I could receive some specificity on what I'm supposed to accomplish with this committee. So I know we'll have some conversations, but just for sake of clarity, making sure I understand where we're going and make sure that's the direction we go.
So we'll leave that with Mr. Boxler and Mr. Roskis to follow up with Dr. Thompson.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'd just like us to, I would like to have the conversation before the 20th, which is that special board meeting, if we could, because what we discuss there might be impacted by what we discussed previous. So if it's possible, we can get together.
Okay. Just to kind of clarify to the community, on what month are we in? July?
July.
July 20th, we are scheduling a special board meeting that will be an executive session. So the purpose of that meeting will be denoted in the agenda. Okay, so just so you guys know what we're referencing. Okay, so I think that covers everything. Let's see, so we've already made a motion, we're discussing it. Mrs. Crooks, can you take a roll?
Mr. Boxler?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mr. Vittori?
Yes.
Ms. Menser?
Yes.
Ms. Baird?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Mrs. Crooks, the floor is yours.
Treasurer's report, item 7A, financial report for the month ending June 30th, 2022. Mr. Charnello sent me with his notes, and I will share those with you. He says, we have completed all of fiscal '22. We came in at 99.6% of our expected expenditures and 102.23% of our expected revenues. Various line items are higher or lower than expected. However, we are in line with where we expected in total. We'll spend the next couple of months reviewing the data, looking for trends in preparation of the next 5-year forecast due in November. Treasurer's report, item 7B, renewal levy resolution. This is the second resolution in order to place a levy on the November ballot. First passed in 1994. This is for $4,745,186. It receives the 12.5% homestead enrollback, and this is paid for by the state for any levy originally passed prior to 2013. It's a 10-year period of time, and cost for a $100,000 home is $74.73 per year.
Do I hear a motion to approve item 7B, renewal levy resolution?
Madam President, I will make a motion to approve item 7B, renewal levy resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Roskis. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Boxler. The floor is open for discussion. So, Mrs. Crooks, you put a really important detail in there. I know that's in collaboration with Mr. Tarnello, and that is that this levy itself has a rollback, correct?
Yes,
Okay, and what's the percent of that rollback?
12.5%.
Okay, and just because I don't want to put you on the spot, I would do it in a heartbeat with Nick, but I'm going to ask Dr. Thompson. Can you explain what that rollback means to those when considering the levy itself?
So prior to 2013, all levies had what was called the homestead rollback, which is essentially what that means is, as a taxpayer, let's just say for simple numbers, we're generating $100,000. 12.5% of that $100,000 wouldn't come from the local taxpayers, it would come from the state. So reducing the burden on the local taxpayers. But they've changed that law now, so any new levies do not have the 12.5% rollback. So as a taxpayer, for us to receive the same $100,000 will cost you 12.5% more than it would had we renewed this levy. So this is a renewal levy. It will not increase your taxes. But if it fails in November, that's the last time it can be placed on the ballot. Obviously, it would have to be placed back on the ballot at a later date that to be determined by the school board. But what you would be looking at as a community, just to keep us whole, it would have to be 12.5% more cost to you to give us the same amount of money, plus we'd lose a year of collections. So the ramifications are significant of a failed levy.
Any questions or additional statements regarding it?
So as long as a levy is renewed, that qualified for that rollback,
That's correct.
it's covered by the state.
It stays, that rollback stays as a state liability until that levy is either non-renewed for whatever reason. Correct. And any new levies do not have the rollback.
And these funds, what do the majority of these funds pay for with regard to the expenses incurred by the district? So how do we use that money?
You know, I think that's one of the most interesting questions I'm asked. About 80% of our budget is people. You know, a lot of times people say things like, if you ran the school like a business, we wouldn't have to be on the ballot all the time. But the comparisons between how a business is run and funded to how a school district is funded couldn't be any more different. House Bill 920, passed in 1976, says that all levies are frozen at that collection rate in perpetuity. So what does that mean? It means if a levy is passed and it generates $4.75 million, it never ever increases no matter what. So imagine you're running your household and your income level is flat. You could do that for a while, but could you do it forever in perpetuity? And that's why school districts, no matter how fiscally sound they are, at some point or another are driven back on the ballot. So what is that money used for? About 80% pays for people. We don't make anything. Again, the difference between we're a service industry, or closest to a service industry. We don't make anything. Of that other remaining 20%, only about 2% of that is discretionary. All the rest is utilities, fuel, repairs of buildings, et cetera, et cetera. There is very little in our budget that you could cut without making significant reductions. And I can tell you that in Willoughby Eastlake, we've been making cuts since 2011. I can speak to that far. And there is no low-hanging fruit. We run very bare bones. So any cuts now that will be discussed shortly, those cuts are cuts to student programming and course offerings because there's nothing else left. To reduce the budget, you got to hit that 80%. That 80% is who? Staff. For example, over the last 10 years, I think we've reduced 10 or 12 secretaries by attrition alone. So we've been doing this for a long time, and the rubber's kind of meeting the road for us in terms of being able to operate our building. And I would take the greatest skeptic that there is and open our books and let you look at them. And if you just stick to the facts, there is no fat cash, there is no waste, there is no fringe. We are a bare bones operation.
Thank you. I think there's one theme of some conversations we've had over and over with security, and I think that was proven with our video that people matter, that our people in our offices, the people in our schools are our security. So I'm glad that we're placing it on the ballot, or at least considering it until voted upon. Any other questions or comments before we take a roll? Mrs. Crooks?
Mr. Boxler?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Vittori?
Yes.
Ms. Menser?
Yes.
Ms. Bear?
Yes.
Motion carried. Treasurer's Report, item 7C, final appropriations for fiscal year '22. This is an annual item that is placed on the agenda, and the end of the fiscal year is June 30th, so we need to close out the prior fiscal year budget.
Okay.
Item 7D, amended appropriations for fiscal year '23. This is a monthly item, It is to account for some of the federal funds that have been allocated to us for fiscal year '23. The remaining federal funds will likely be board approved in August. Item 7E, Amendment 3 to Transportation Agreement. This was mentioned in the savings presentation last month. It will save the district $100,000 a year for the next 5 years.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve item 7E, Amendment 3 to Transportation Agreement?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to approve 7E, Amendment 3 to Transportation Agreement.
Thank you, Mrs. Benzer. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Vittori. The floor is open for discussion. Any questions? I think a community member had made mention to, and obviously Dr. Thompson, you said you would reach out to the community member, but we're working with Peterman to, once again, make it seems, based on this, as many nips and tucks as we can in the budget as possible. Is there anything else that Mr. Tarnello or you, Mrs. Crooks, would provide to elaborate on this, or?
I don't have any additional information.
That's okay. Just making sure. Thank you, Mrs. Crooks. Okay. Any other discussion? Mrs. Crooks?
Mr. Boxler?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Vittori?
Yes.
Ms. Menser?
Yes.
Ms. Bear?
Yes.
Motion carried. Item 7F of the Treasurer's Report, Establishment of Petty Cash Accounts. This is an annual item to provide each school building with a small amount of cash for emergency purposes.
Okay.
Item 7G, Establishment of Change Funds, is also an annual item for the athletic offices to have cash on hand to make change at athletic events. Item 7H, Travel Payment and Reimbursement Rates. This is an annual item recommending a change from per meal reimbursements to a per diem amount. The daily total will not change for in-state travel. We do not have much out-of-state travel. This change is being recommended to increase staff efficiencies by no longer reviewing receipts for reimbursements. Item 7I, Advance of General Funds, is an annual item to ensure that all funds end the fiscal year with a positive cash balance. These funds will be returned to the general fund in August. Item 7J, Return of Advances. This is to return an advance from the Health Insurance Fund. The advance was board approved at the June meeting. Item 7K, Transfer to Unclaimed Funds. This is to move funds that were unclaimed to the 007 fund. These are checks that have not been cashed even after being notified several times. Item 7L, Purchase Orders. Willow Transportation. This PO ran out of funds, which is not uncommon at the end of a fiscal year. Then and nows, these are items where the invoice was dated prior to the PO being in place. Some of these had POs in place. However, Ohio Revised Code dictates that a blanket PO cannot cross fiscal years. Hence, these invoices are being paid against a PO in fiscal '23. Item 7M, Student Activity Accounts. This is an annual agenda item, which looks unusually large at the beginning of the year due to new fiscal year '23 budgets must be on the agenda prior to the club activity being able to spend funds. Item 7N, Gifts and Donations. Longfellow PTA donated $1,500 to Longfellow for partial payment of a reflex site license from Explore Learning. Longfellow PTA also donated $1,762.60 to Longfellow for the 2021-2022 field trip transportation costs.
Thank you. the board would like to extend a thank you to the PTA for donating and supporting those activities for the school. Thank you very much. Okay, Mrs. Crooks, thank you. Just to make mention, especially because we have a lot of new faces today, all of those items are consent items. They had an asterisk next to them, which is why we weren't taking a vote on them, because once again, we've had the opportunity to review and speak with Mr. Charnello, who is our treasurer, in advance of this meeting. And those asterisks, just to note, that once again, we're going to vote on them together when we vote on the consent calendar at the end of the meeting. Okay, and with that, we'll move on to item 8A, our superintendent's report for the strategic plan update.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, school board, and welcome guests. It is refreshing to have a conversation about academics. So I'm glad that we're coming back to that. So each year we take a look at the strategic plan, which has been board approved. We're in the second year, heading into the second year of that strategic plan. So what we do each year, we sit down with our entire administrative team and our supervisors. We review the plan and then make sure we have actionable, measurable steps in place so that we can track ourselves and hold ourselves accountable to execute that plan. So this is what it is. And by the way, I will give you a copy of this PowerPoint so you don't have to write everything down. But the plan's modified and updated. Again, central office personnel, building principals, assistant principals, and supervisors all took place in that. So most of our focus is on, as you might imagine, academic excellence and student wellness is our focus. And during the 22-23 school year, teachers will use Illuminate assessments and data to drive instruction as measured by monthly usage checks. Remember, Illuminate assessments are directly aligned with the state tests. So if we are consistently giving assessments of our students, not to the point where we're over-assessing, but giving enough common assessments across grade levels, we know where they are tracking academically as the year proceeds. So what we are focusing on is training administrators in the use of Illuminate and how to create those assessments. That is already completed. We are looking at principals' plan to illuminate training days for August and October for teachers to work in grade levels and content areas across the district to create those common assessments. Teachers will create common assessments and Illuminate. That's the due date of when they are due, and they'll be checked by the administration. And they'll use those assessments to drive instruction. And you can see there we're focusing more on ELA and mathematics initially. Those are highly tested areas across multiple grade levels. Then science and social studies bi-monthly, and all other subjects monthly. And you can see the dates that the checks are in place to ensure that that is happening. Again, we don't want to overwhelm our teachers. The teachers have, what teachers do is unlike anything you could imagine from when you were in school. The requirements are significantly higher, and what we ask students to do might blow your mind. If you sat down to take a third grade proficiency test, you'd probably be humbled. I wouldn't want to take them. They're much more difficult than what we experienced as students ourselves. In fact, we didn't take them at all. Most of us, you might have, because you're young, but not me and not Bill. So
I did. In the state of New York, we had those for many years.
Principals will monitor the usage of Illuminate to drive instruction on a monthly basis starting in September, and you can see the check dates on those as well. Again, and so we have a software program we also purchased called ExactPath, which our principals are very excited about. What it does is it tells you exactly what the name says. It tells you exactly where students are as it's measured against the standards that we're teaching. So teachers will have the ability to really determine pretty early in the process where students are, where the students in their classrooms are. So we'll address that district testing window for diagnostics 1, 2, and 3 by the middle of August. That'll be printed. We'll communicate expectations for ExactPath, and you can see when each grade level is doing it and which building level and when they'll be responsible for executing that. Students will work in their learning path for 20 minutes 3 times per week. We can obviously monitor that through the software. And again, the dates that we'll be checking. We'll review diagnostic data on September 23rd, January, and May. So 3 checks across the district to know where we're going. And that's in part in response to being able to have the data to report back out to you all as a school board. So again, this continues. We'll review those learning progress pathways, and again, the dates are there. Make adjustments to instruction interventions per data following diagnostics with learning path reviews. And again, those are the check dates. Train teachers on systems and reports. We'll have that done before we get into the school year. Develop a survey to evaluate administration of exact path for the upcoming school year. And that's the following school year. And during the 22-23 school year, all schools will apply for the next level of state recognition for PBIS. PBIS is our system that really helps us keep a handle on the climate of a school and then how that's measured. So we will do that as measured by a score of 70% or higher on the tiered fidelity inventory walkthroughs. So this is state recognized, and as you know, our schools have done a tremendous job in earning awards across the state. We're one of the most decorated school districts in terms of PBIS awards, and a lot of our schools are striving for gold for next year, which is obviously as high as you can go. We'll expand diversity in buildings and PBIS teams to include a minimum of 6 members. Attend and complete required training. We're trying to get more and more building level teams engaged. Monitor evidence of PBIS through walkthroughs, and that's monthly. Streamline collection of minor and major PBIS data in Power School. So we have not collectively measured that up to this point, but we'll have access to that data. So for example, as a school board, you want to ask the question, what does the discipline track look like in any building? We'll be able to track that data and across the district, for example. Use of EduClimber, and we're going to use that to make data-driven decisions. That's where a lot of our data will be housed. And again, during the 22-23 school year, a new science curriculum will be implemented for grades 6, 7, and 8 at all 4 of our middle schools. So how are we going to go about doing that? They'll take an inventory of new materials and distribute those to buildings and here in central office for use for training purposes. We'll have those out before the start of the school year. We'll establish those training dates and get those out to staff and buildings. That will review the science curriculum and implementation expectations by the building principals by early September. Obviously, we're trying to get ahead of this. And then we'll conduct quarterly walkthroughs of science classrooms to ensure the implementation and usage, and those are the dates. So we're going to dry run this curriculum. We'll follow up with science teachers and building principals regarding material replacements at the building level in May of 19 at the end of the year, 23. Again, we'll develop district-wide decisions for rules for literacy to provide guidance on the implementation of Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions for K-8. So again, DLST stands for District Literacy Support Teams. So we have teams in place at the district level and at the building level, and they are to make decisions and develop rules to begin developing a template for what this is going to look like. That'll be required to be completed by August. And then they'll draft a decision of the rules as it's reviewed by the building principals and their building level support teams as well. And then they'll finalize the decision by September and then put that out and gather feedback and make adjustments as needed and share those revisions to have it completely wrapped up by January. As I mentioned, EduClimber before, as a tool for analyzing student performance data, progress monitoring, and evaluating the effectiveness of academic and behavioral interventions. All that data will be housed there. So we're going to establish a training calendar for EduClimber by August. We'll identify and upload relevant data and develop reporting thresholds. Those are our projected threshold reporting dates. Develop training documents for staff to support the use of the product. And then provide continuing support to administrators and staff on how to use EduClimber. Those are our check-in dates. We've had a lot of discussions about PACE, providing alternative choices in education. So we're in the process of placing students in that program. Again, it will start small, it will grow. I believe it will be very successful. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, PACE is an alternative placement for some of our students who are struggling behaviorally primarily. And we believe that if we get them in the right environment with the right people, which we have a fabulous team in place to work with these students, and we're going to have a heavy focus on mental health issues as well. I suspect some of these kids, it'll be the first time they've ever had success and will probably never want to leave, and some of them will at some point or another return to their home schools. We will check on progress of PACE renovations, furniture orders, and classroom setup for the start of the school year by August 5th. No pressure, Steve Johnson. And oh, by the way, since we're in a public meeting, we need those POs released. So
I already worked on that all day.
thank you. Thank you. I like that. Nothing like being in a public meeting and called out, right? Establish quarterly meetings with the PACE director to review PACE programming and student progress. So we'll have that ironed out before school starts, and then we'll hold quarterly meetings with the staff to review programming and student progress. So we'll also board report those out. We asked for an investment. We asked in your faith in an investment. I believe it'll work. I believe it'll be worth the investment, but you need the data to support that decision. So you'll receive that data. You'll receive data like their attendance, their behavioral issues, their grades, et cetera, et cetera.
Dr. Thompson, not to interrupt because you're
Yep.
on a roll and you're doing great, but you just occurred to me. We know that removing students and providing them an alternative environment
Mhm.
should not only have an impact on them as an individual, but also the dynamic in the school that they left behind. Because we know that one student, children don't do this on purpose, but one student could be very disruptive to an entire classroom. So we should also, what do we have in place to monitor the impact to the schools they've left or the classrooms that they've left? Do you know what I'm saying?
Much harder to measure.
Yes.
Of course, that would be more anecdotal than it would be measurable. But I think we all would agree. I think everyone in this room would agree that one person in this very room could change the tenor of this entire room, one way or another. So some students. And it's an admirable trait to a degree. Some students can influence an entire school by their behavior. Now imagine if that behavior were positive, what they could do. So I think it's going to not only, we want to obviously help this student, but we also, the initial impetus, quite frankly, was to make our buildings, our traditional buildings run more smoothly.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
It does. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. During the school year, we'll also utilize technology at the point of instruction to support students' access to educational content and increase student achievement. I would be remiss if I did not take the opportunity to thank Andrea. We wouldn't be one-to-one this year without her efforts. She really went above and beyond to find ways to fund and execute the plan. She deserves the credit. It's been a goal of our district for a long time, probably since 2017 or 18 was our first discussions. We've been working on it since 2011, and it's taken a long time to get here, but we will be one-to-one next year. But it's not just the computers. You'll see there are other things here, but giving students a tool doesn't make any difference at all if we don't utilize the tool effectively. So again, we'll start that training for one-to-one. We're bringing in a gentleman named Eric Kurtz. You know Eric Kurtz, right? And what would you say about Eric Kurtz on the spot?
He is a rock star. He is the Google guy for all of Ohio.
Okay. So we're fortunate to get him in for training, and that's one of our first training days for our staff when we return. We'll collect the walkthrough data on device usage during weekly walkthroughs and monitor data monthly. And you can see again the check-in dates of when we're looking at that data. We spend, central office spends a lot of time immersed in data and going through data. But that's the only way you know what's being executed or not being executed. We'll review walkthrough data with staff each month at their monthly staff meetings. We do that at our monthly administrative meetings as well. And then in November, we're going to have technology options menu for professional development, utilizing our own teachers as our presenters. So we'll get our teachers that are more skilled and more confident leading. I think that usually goes over very well. And menu day means exactly what it sounds like. They're not forced into one particular training session. They have a variety of options, and they get to choose based on where they feel their needs are. They know more than we do where their areas of strength and where their areas of areas that might need improvement. We'll conduct November technology options menu, as I mentioned. We'll monitor the use of technology through OTES conferences, lesson plans, and feedback in our walkthroughs. We'll plan a February professional development day as well with a focus on technology to enhance engagement with students when they're using these machines and using technology. And then conduct February professional development day, which will be on February 17th. Additionally, in May, we'll review 2020 Teacher Technology Survey and conduct teacher technology surveys with the administration and our teachers to get feedback. And we'll highlight the technology resources to support teachers at the building level. And again, those are the dates of execution. And monitor school usage by teachers, students, and parents by reviewing monthly usage reports. So again, we can pull some pretty slick reports about what's used, and we even can, in our new software, we can pull pretty nice data on just execution of our strategic plan as well. So those will be reported out quarterly to the board. And then during the 22-23 school year, each pre-K building will host at least one parent engagement activity to assist parents and guardians in providing academic support for their children. This is the section of our strategic plan where we are trying to engage the community more. So how are we going to check on this? Principals report via Google Sheet, plan community parent engagement activities for the school year, and then update it quarterly. And those are our checks on making sure we're making progress with those community engagement activities. And it could be a variety of things. It could be a fair. It could be a movie night. It could be a variety of things, and we're leaving that to the discretion of the principals. But we want them to do things that engage the community. And then principals will work with the public relations coordinator to promote events and report on successes following each of the events. And again, those are our check-in dates to make sure that, if you don't tell your story, somebody is. And typically, I'd rather be in control of our story than, we know the story the best, we should be telling the story. That's your update. I tried to go quickly, but I hope not too quickly. Again, I will send you this information, and then if you have any questions about it, obviously now, I'll try to address it, or as you peruse through that data, or through the presentation and have questions, I can certainly answer it at a later date. But I think probably the biggest highlight is for you to know that accountability is there, and we're prepared to then report that back out to the board on with some level of regularity. You are right. We need to have more conversations about things like this. This is what matters, and that's where our focus should be.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. Questions? I have to say I'm usually ripe with questions. However, because the majority of these were previously provided to us and discussed in other meetings, I don't have many, if any, questions at all.
Okay.
I want to thank you. One of our last meetings, I know. I like to ask questions. I like to ask a lot of questions. So do my children. I saw his dance. But what I do want to say is, in one of our last board meetings, and we've had a lot of them, so I apologize. I would love to be specific, but I cannot. I asked, and Mrs. Kevrin was here, and I said, I need some data. We need to be more data-driven. Can you please present it? And I appreciate that. Not only is there opportunity to find where the data aligns, but where we should be getting the data from and when we should be receiving it. Because as a board member, that's what I want to focus on. And I know learning loss is systemic in education right now due to the pandemic. And I think that's where we owe our best efforts. So thank you. I do appreciate that. That's all I have to say. Okay. While Dr. Thompson reorients himself, we're going to move on to item 9A, Superintendent Resolutions. Dr. Thompson, feel free to continue.
So what you're going to hear, and typically this is normal for summer, and before we get into the agenda, just more overarching, I think one of the mistakes that can be made, especially after a levy fails, is we take important tasks that cost money, but save you money in the long term in terms of preventative maintenance. And you push them off, and then the next thing you know, you've gone 5 years, and something you could have easily fixed with seal coat now becomes $1 million pavement project. And so I just want to preface that I recognize that we're in a fiscally uncertain time. But if we don't maintain our new facilities and maintain our facilities that we renovated and stick to our renovation schedule, we're going to find ourselves in a significant hole. So while I understand that this might cause trepidation, some of these expenditures might cause trepidation for some, please remember this is a $150 million budget. This is less than 1% of that budget, but they're crucial expenditures in my view, or I wouldn't have put them on here. So with that being said, the first one is a camera licensing and security software upgrade. The license for our current security cameras has expired. Typically, the cost of these licenses increases when the contract expires. In the contract for this transaction, Citywide, which has been a long-term partner of ours, Citywide has agreed they will not increase the fees for our existing cameras if we pay the one-time licensing fee, and this will avoid future fees on these cameras moving forward. In addition to the camera fee, Citywide is also including additional cameras and upgrades to our servers, which we desperately need. To compare, we did go out and shop. We compared costs, and we received a quote for the same work from another company that totaled $377,000, and that was our next nearest quote to our current quote, which is $161,821. So we are shopping, we are doing the best we can, and we know Citywide does a really good job for us. But if we don't upgrade these and license them, then we lose control of those cameras. The police won't be able to take control of our cameras, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't think in today's day and age that's a risk we want to take.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve item 9A, camera licensing and security software upgrade?
Madam President, I will make a motion to approve item 9A, camera licensing and security software upgrade.
Thank you, Mr. Roskis. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Menser. The floor is open for discussion. At the end, I caught on to something that I feel is important, especially because we've been discussing safety lately. You had made mention that the police can take control of our cameras. What does that mean?
They have laptops in their cruisers, and they can actually log on to our camera system and control the movement and bring up the camera feed in their cruiser. So let's say there was an active shooter, or a spill of a chemical, you name it. They have a full visual map of our schools, plus they can take control of our cameras. And even in our older buildings, we're trying to replace those camera systems so they can do that same thing that they can do at North and South, and Willoughby Middle and Longfellow, be able to do that across the district. Steve Johnson, are you still here? How far would you say we are in that process of replacing all of our cameras?
Well, with this, if this is approved tonight, we're in a really good role to be in great shape.
Okay.
That'll also have access at their dispatch centers also.
So the dispatcher can pull them up as well.
Okay. So just so everybody can hear what Mr. Johnson said, and Mr. Johnson's official position is?
He's our operations guy.
Yeah, just making sure everybody knows. Also want to get it on recording for audio, because I know we're focused on that, is that we're going to be in a really good position by which, if this is approved, to ensure that that's kind of moving in the right direction.
Right.
I know I feel much better as a board member knowing that we can have a little bit faster response time in the event of a crisis. So
It's not only a faster response time, it gives imagine going into a 250,000 square foot building and you don't know where the problem, in the case of an intruder, where the intruder is or how many there are. Our police would pretty quickly know how many they were and where they were. Or where they are, I should say.
any other questions? Mrs. Crooks?
Mr. Boxler?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Vittori?
Yes.
Ms. Menser?
Yes.
Ms. Bear?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Madam President. For your item B, for your consideration is a parking lot repair at NCI Willoughby. This is concrete, not blacktop. Lasts longer but costs more. But it was concrete when we purchased the facility. So the item for the concrete parking lot at NCI Willoughby, we did receive quotes again for this, ranging from one that we selected at $74,800. The highest was $90,000, and the next one was $79,000. We got a total of 3 bids. We selected the company that not only gave us the lowest bid, but also has done work for us in the past, and they have consistently delivered high-quality workmanship.
Do I hear a motion to approve item 9B, parking lot repair at NCI Willoughby?
Madam President, I motion to approve item 9B, parking lot repair at NCI Willoughby.
Thank you, Mr. Boxler. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Vittori. Floor is open. Questions? Hearing none. Mrs. Crooks?
Mr. Boxler?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Vittori?
Yes.
Ms. Menser?
Yes.
Ms. Bear?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item C for your consideration is security film, the 3M security film. If you recall, last month I showed a video that had the intruder firing AR-15 through the glass and then taking the butt of the rifle and smashing it in. Took about nearly 2 minutes for this particular individual to get through the first set of glass. Remember, in our buildings, not only would they have the first set of glass, they would have another set of glass. So somewhere about 4 minutes for an intruder even firing a weapon to get through and into our schools. The average response time to our buildings is less than 3 minutes. So in all practical scenarios, provided those doors are locked, and all ours are sync locked, they're computer locked, they wouldn't be able to get into the building. So we are currently working to install film at additional windows. We hope to have. We had some supply chain issues which slowed our ability to finish the project. Mr. Johnson, how close will we be at the end of this summer?
If board approved, we should be about 98%.
On all windows,
Windows first floor.
and doors on first floor, with the exception of one window in each classroom, which we do not publicly divulge, that our teachers could break out and leave of the building on first floor levels.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve item 9C, security film installation?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to approve 9C, security film installation.
Thank you, Mrs. Menzer. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I will second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Roskis. The floor is open for discussion. Okay. Hearing none. Mrs. Crooks?
Mr. Boxler?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Vittori?
Yes.
Ms. Menzer?
Yes.
Ms. Bear?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Madam President. Item D for your consideration is the facility conditions assessment. And this is a contract, it's with the company that we currently use for our work orders. They could be the dumbest name I've ever heard, but they do a great job. It's called School Dudes. I would have advised them not to make that their name, but that's their name. Anyway, they now have the ability to help us assess equipment and provide data regarding the life expectancy of that equipment. And this is ranging from things like air conditioners to boilers to any motorized, anything that moves in our district. And this will allow us to plan for maintenance and replacement of all mechanicals over a 5-year forecast. So just like our financial 5-year forecast, we will now have a 5-year forecast for our equipment, and will allow us to conduct proper maintenance. It even sends, for example, you can't miss, for example, a filter replacement, because the system will automatically create a work order letting our maintenance guys know they need to go to a certain school to change certain filters. So there's no way that we can do that without help. And although this is obviously an expenditure, I think it'll pay dividends to us by allowing us to effectively continue to do our PMCS primary, preventative maintenance services.
Do I hear a motion to approve item 9D, facility condition assessment?
I'm sorry.
Did I do something wrong?
No, I don't have a,
Shiva.
go ahead.
I will help you resolve the issue.
Madam President, I think I'm going to make a motion for
Yes.
9D, facility condition assessment.
Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I will second that motion.
Thank you very much. The floor is open. Okay. Hearing no conversation, Mrs. Crooks, can you take a roll?
Mr. Boxler?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Vittori?
Yes.
Ms. Menzer?
Yes.
Ms. Bear?
Yes.
I had no voting.
I've been writing it down.
I just,
It's okay. Mrs. Crooks is covering for Mr. Charnello, who is not here today. He's on vacation. So we will take care of that. That's the great thing about video, right? So, okay. I believe that motion passed 5-0.
oh yes, I'm sorry. Motion carried. I will get back with the program, I promise.
We're all here. We're one unit. Okay.
Item E for your consideration, and the longer I talk, the more people are leaving, so I'm not sure exactly how I should take that, but I think this stuff's riveting. I don't know what's wrong with people. It's a preventative maintenance contract for renewal of our HVAC and boilers, and this contract pays for the software and data associated with the facility conditions assessment, which we just talked about through School Dude. It also includes training and the initial one-time startup fee for the program. The recommended maintenance schedules identified after the assessment of our mechanicals will be inputted, and then the district will follow the schedules, track repairs, and make sure that all work gets done over time. Of course, this program will help us monitor and ensure proper maintenance is being done and extend the life of all of our mechanicals and stretch them out for as long as possible. But also know when we need to budget, because boilers, for example, what's a boiler, 80,000?
Yeah.
So, I mean, these are pretty expensive repairs. A roof is, could be, well, I think our roof at South, when we replaced that several years ago, was $3 or $4 million. They're very, very expensive expenditures.
Do I hear a motion to approve item 9E, preventative maintenance contract renewal for HVAC and boilers?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to approve item 9E, preventative maintenance contract renewal for HVAC and boilers.
Thank you, Mr. Vittori. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Boxler. The floor is open. I feel it important to state the only reason why I keep track of voting is because I have to approve the agendas each month before they get put up for vote. So that's why I'm keeping track. Not because I don't trust the very capable Mrs. Crooks who's here with us tonight. So other than that, I think preventative maintenance over time really helps reduce costs. So I'm excited to see that we have these practices in place. Any other questions or comments? Mrs. Crooks.
Mr. Boxler?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Vittori?
Yes.
Ms. Menser?
Yes.
Ms. Bear?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Madam President, item F for your consideration is the weed control and vegetation management. This might be the only thing I dislike as much as tape.
Dr.
Dislike
Thompson.
tape.
Yeah.
It's evil. This contract is for weed control throughout the district. As a district, we are not permitted to use certain products because we do not have the necessary licensing to use that product. So we cannot complete this work in-house. So although the closest quote came only $46 higher than the quote that you see before you, we multiple quoted it out. We stuck with this company because they've done good work for us, and by $46, they were the lowest quote.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve item 9F, weed control and vegetation management?
Madam President, I will make a motion to approve item 9F, weed control and vegetation management.
Thank you, Mr. Roskis. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Vittori. Floor is open. Hearing none. Mrs. Crooks?
Mr. Boxler?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Vittori?
Yes.
Ms. Menser?
Yes.
Ms. Bear?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Madam President. Item G for your consideration is a memorandum of agreement with WIDA, which is our Willoughby Eastlake Teachers Association staff that are at the SAIL program, that is our autism program. And the agreement is between the members of the association and the district. It's on the agenda each year. This isn't new. Because of the needs of the students in the SAIL program, the staff members are not able to utilize the same planning periods and breaks that our normal staff members receive in the classroom. And this means that essentially what it means is they work more hours outside of the contractual agreement, and this memorandum of understanding compensates them for their time.
Do I hear a motion to approve item 9G, memorandum of agreement with WIDA SAIL program?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to approve item 9G, memorandum of agreement with WIDA for the SAIL program.
Thank you, Mr. Vittori. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Menser. The floor is open. I just wanted to say, when we did our building tours and we were provided an opportunity to meet some of the teachers who work in the SAIL program and some of the facilities that support students in that program, and also hearing from community members whose students participate in them, I'm very impressed and thankful that we have this program to support our students. So I just want to personally thank WIDA and the individuals who really make these students' educational careers fruitful. So thank you. Any other questions, conversation? Mrs. Crooks?
Mr. Boxler?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Vittori?
Yes.
Ms. Menser?
Yes.
Ms. Bear?
Yes.
Motion carried.
And item H for your consideration is the same agreement with WESEP, and I will say that our classified professionals that work with these students, see another person right there, our classified, I'm watching you guys, hang in there, I'm almost done. They provide as much for our students as our teachers do. So I'll ditto what you said for them.
Yes.
And this agreement is the same and compensates them because they're in the same position. They don't get their natural normal breaks.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve item 9H, memorandum of agreement with WESEP SAIL program?
Madam President, I will make a motion to approve item 9H, memorandum of agreement with WESEP for the SAIL program.
Thank you, Mr. Roskis. Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Boxler. And obviously, we extend the same gratitude to those classified professionals that support our teachers. Thank you once again. Any other conversations, discussion? Mrs. Crooks?
Mr. Boxler?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Vittori?
Yes.
Ms. Menzer?
Yes.
Ms. Bear?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Madam President, item I for your consideration is the 22-23 breakfast and lunch schedules. And this item shows the prices for school lunches for the upcoming school year, and the prices are less for students, obviously, that qualify for or approve for reduced lunch prices. A reduced lunch price is 40 cents. So for breakfast was $2 last year, goes to $2.25. For elementary lunch went from $3.05 to $3.25. Middle school lunch goes from $3.35 to $3.50, and high school prices go from $3.45 to $3.75. It's not our desire to raise prices, but we are trying, as you can imagine, you can't eat at McDonald's on the value menu for that. We have a lot of restrictions on health requirements, et cetera, plus we want our lunches to be good. We want our kids to eat our lunches. So we'll be back to our full lunches for next school year, to include our Mongolian grills in the high school, which are a huge hit. So the food we know that the food was great if you're on a diet, but maybe not so great otherwise. It was because of COVID. We just had so many packaging restrictions, et cetera. Truly was not the fault of those ladies. They were simply operating with both hands tied behind their back, trying to make it all work. So we don't want to pass on this, but as you all know in your own lives, inflation and cost of products has greatly increased. So they're still cheap, but we need an increase to have a fighting chance to try and stay in the black.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve item 9I, 2022-23 breakfast and lunch prices?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to approve 9I, 2022-23 breakfast and lunch prices.
Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I will second that.
Thank you, Ms. Vittori. I saw you. She beat you to it. The floor is open for discussion. One quick question, because this is a change. What are the plans in place to notify parents of this change? When will they receive the information that there's been an increase?
You want us to actually tell people? I'm teasing. I'm sorry, that was not in good taste. I apologize. Pardon the pun there. Boy, I'm on a roll, aren't I?
You're going to get more people to leave.
That's the idea. No, teasing. Gosh, I'm in big trouble. I'm on audio. I'm being filmed. Forgot about that.
Oh, Lord.
We'll put all that out in our welcome back newsletters that go out in August. So when our principals come back on August 1st, one of the first things they push out are newsletters. So this is important information that, obviously, joking aside, that we will focus on and making sure that they receive this information from our staff, and then we'll put something out overall from the district out from PR, from our public relations department as well,
Okay.
and on website.
I was going to say it's a big change from last year with meals being free.
Yeah.
Right, and understand that that's a really important point, Stacy. The lunches weren't free because Willoughby Eastlake made them free. The lunches were free because the federal government made them free, and the federal government is no longer making them free. So we are back to, so these prices are really 2 years old. So, the increase maybe wouldn't seem as drastic had we not had free for almost 2 years.
Thank you. Other conversation, questions? Mrs. Crooks?
Mr. Boxler?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Vittori?
Yes.
Ms. Menzer?
Yes.
Ms. Bear?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Madam President, item J for your consideration are school fees. What you will see unique to our school fees this year is a $20 fee for a technology fee. to incentivize people to make that technology fee within the first quarter. If a student has any repair to a machine inside during the whole school year, their first one, if they pay their fee within the first 9 weeks, that repair will be free. So chances are, it could be something simple like some keys come off, or who knows what could potentially happen. But as long as that fee is paid, that cost will be covered. The cases, Andrea, they're all cased as well, correct?
Correct, it should never come out of their case.
Never. You heard it. Yeah, that's the rule, right? Never come out of your case. All right.
I will take that feedback home.
You should.
I have a case laying on the living room floor as we speak. So, okay. Any questions about school fees? Dr. Thompson?
Is that a
asking.
consent
Consent.
item?
Yes,
Oh,
it
I'm
is.
sorry. I didn't realize that was consent. My fault.
It's okay.
Item K for your consideration, which is consent as well, is the 22-23 co-curricular fees. Those fees are the same participation fees as last year. There's no change to that fee schedule. Item L for your consideration is the parent-guardian transportation agreement. This item is so that parents can be reimbursed if they transport their own child to a school that is not a Willoughby Eastlake school, such as Gilmore Academy or Lake Catholic. They are legally entitled to this reimbursement if all criteria set by the state are met. Item M for your consideration is the personnel agenda, and we have, did she wait it out, or did Kaylee? Kaylee couldn't take it anymore, huh? One of our assistant principals, there are 2 assistant principals that are on the agenda. Kaylee Flint might be a name some of you recognize or remember. She was the band teacher, music teacher at Willowick Middle and North, correct? For us for several years, left last year to become an assistant principal at Madison, and fortunately for us, applied and came back, and she'll be the assistant principal at Willowick Middle School. So she's already familiar with the staff, familiar with the students, so we're really excited. And on her reference checks, we always push for a weakness of a candidate, and Mr. Murphy pushed and pushed for a weakness, and what did you finally get as a response?
Well, the principal at the high school said, well, after a quarter, she did everything perfectly.
Yeah.
So it took her a whole quarter to figure out how to be a student.
And that was her weakness.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. So, and then our second candidate comes to us for Edison Elementary. She comes from Southwestern Schools outside of Columbus, teacher for about 5 years. Her principal said,
We would be foolish not to hire her.
yeah, so her references checked out really well. I watched her video interview, which we do first. She was very smooth, very articulate. So I think we have 2 strong young assistant principals. But, when we hire assistant principals, we always try to hire them under the idea that we feel like they could become principals for us. And many of them do become principals for us. So we're excited about both of them. I apologize for the late addition on the agenda for them, but it was simply because of just circumstances and when resignations came that kind of forced us to delay, and I didn't want to delay hiring them for respect of their employers, that they be replaced.
Okay, that concludes our superintendent resolutions. We're now moving on to our new item 10A, meeting notification. As we amended the agenda early today, those numbers did change. Want to inform everyone that the next regular Board of Education meeting is scheduled for Monday, August 8th at 7 p.m. at the Administration Building at 35353 Curtis Boulevard in Eastlake, Ohio. And we'll then move on to item 12A, the consent calendar, the adoption of consent calendar. Do I hear a motion to approve item 12A?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to approve item 12A, adoption of consent calendar.
Okay. Edit, it's 11A
Oh,
now.
Sorry, 11A.
That was my fault. 11A now.
11A, adoption of consent calendar.
Thank you. Do I hear a second for item 11A?
Madam President. Madam President, we really want to second this motion.
Really, who got that one?
Mr.
That was
Vittori
me.
got
Thank
it.
you.
So once again, just to confirm for the community, all items with an asterisk fall under consent calendar. So as we vote on this item 11A, we are essentially voting on all items which had an asterisk. Conversation? Mrs. Crooks.
Mr. Boxler?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Vittori?
Yes.
Ms. Menser?
Yes.
Ms. Bear?
Yes.
Motion carried.
We now move on to item 12A, adjournment. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
President, I'll
Pre-
make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mrs. Menzer, and a second.
Madam President, I will second that motion.
That is wonderful. We made it under 3 hours. We are improving. Mrs. Crooks.
Mr. Boxler?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Vittori?
Yes.
Ms. Menser?
Yes.
Ms. Bear?
Yes.
Motion carried.
We
Meeting
wish you,
adjourned.
meeting is adjourned. We wish you all a wonderful evening. Thank you.